3 months have passed since my last tier list, and now we have a robot,
You humans are so pathetic.
an alien, and Sadako is no longer one of the weakest killers in the game. So let's start with characters that are outdated and very weak overall in this ranking. No matter how many months pass, the Trapper is still the worst killer in Dead by Daylight. He suffers from having one of the worst early games and easy counterable power and massive dependency on good perks, good add-ons, and specific maps. The Trapper's power is also fully dependent on survivors making mistakes, since all you can do is put traps and hope for the best. The devs have said that they are happy with his performance, but the Trapper desperately needs a lot of quality of life changes in order to not be so weak. There is some saving grace with the Trapper, as some of his add-ons do help him become significantly better than Base Kit, and the Basement Trapper playstyle is really hard to counter as a survivor. But no matter what, you still require that survivor mistake in order to snowball the match. Add in new perks like Made for This or the new buffed Buckle Up, and there is literally no counter for it for the Trapper. Another killer that has a lot of problems is Michael Myers, who also suffers from a very bad early game. The problem with him is that his power is very outdated compared to the current fast-paced meta of the game, and there are characters that are simply way better than him. His tier 3 is scary, especially with add-ons like the Tombstone Piece, which is one of the strongest add-ons in the entire game, but survivors still can counter his power by getting into lockers, or by playing safe while Myers has it active. He is just a glorified stealth M1 character with no map traversal and anti-loop, and with a power that has a lot of design choices that are remnants of 2016 Dead by Daylight. Freddy Krueger is still the same boring killer he has been for some years now. His power is very lacking and he doesn't offer any skill expression since his power is one of the easiest ones in the game. He can suffer from bad early game since he has a pretty long cooldown at the start to teleport, nor his power works until survivors are asleep, which passively takes 1 entire minute. Survivors can also interact with clocks to prevent his power from working temporarily for 30 seconds, technically making this passive cooldown a whopping 90 seconds for a survivor to fall asleep on their own. His generator teleport is probably the strongest part of his kit, yet it still becomes worse and worse the longer the match advances and the less generators there are. And also, it doesn't synergize well with perks like Deadlock or Deadman Switch. Freddy Krueger also has a secondary power that he can only access with add-ons, which are the fake pallets, and those are easily countered by survivors that have a brain or survivors that are on Discord. Besides, once survivors know which of the two powers you have, they can immediately confirm that you are not using the other one. The devs have confirmed that they are planning on giving him a rework, so until then, Freddy will still suck and stay at the bottom tiers. Now let's go over characters that are not as bad but could be definitely better. The Pig is a jack of all trades, master of none. She has mediocre anti-loop with her ambush attack, mediocre stealth with her crouch, and the best part of her kit is the slowdown, which is still limited per match and also depends on add-ons to become truly good, and you can only use this pressure once you down your first survivor. She doesn't excel at anything really, making her one of the most simple characters to play the game with. The big issue she has, and a lot of low tier killers have, is that on big maps, she has no mobility and no pressure. Her stealth is not good enough to get ambush attacks of clueless survivors either, especially compared with any other stealth killer in the game. But, to be fair, I like the way she is, as playing Pig is probably the closest experience you will have to playing a pure M1 character that is also not a pure M1 character, so I don't think she is as bad as the other 3 characters we just talked about, but she still suffers from survivor perks like Made for This or against Gen Rush builds. The Clown has a very strong 1 vs 1 power, with his ability to throw bottles to slow down survivors. In fact, he might have one of the easiest killer powers to just pick and play. The issue is that he needs good pressure in order to have any chance at slowing down the game progress, and against good survivors that know how to loop, he can feel powerless. Just like the rest of characters, the clown has almost no mobility in his power, as the only thing he has going on is the yellow bottles, which can increase his speed and also the speed of survivors, but it's not enough to compete against high caliber survivors. There are some builds that can make him very obnoxious to play against, especially when paired with some of his best add-ons and with perks like Save the Best for Last or the new Alien perk. But outside of that, the only time you will feel powerful against competent survivors is if they have motion sickness or they are scared of clowns in real life. A fan favorite for a lot of players and beginners, the Legion, just like the clown, have a fantastic power that is easy to understand for beginners, as it automatically tracks the locations of survivors once you find someone first, and the mending gives some type of game slowdown even if it's not much. The problem is that outside of that first hit, the Legion are just M1 characters, as the only way to down someone with their power is to chain 5 hits in a row. For that reason, the moment you get survivors that are good players and understand how to counter Legion, they become weak. Also, good luck playing against survivors that are not scared of being injured, because those matches tend to be the ones that remind you how Legion is a C tier character and why it's ranked this way, especially now with Made for This literally buffing survivors that stay injured. Yes, by now you probably noticed that I talk way too much about Made for This, but this perk is a new meta perk that impacts low tier M1 chasing killers the most, just like Boone's Circle of Healing impacted hit and run killers in a past tier list. At least with Legion, you are not bothered much by Buckle Up and For the People. The Trickster is one of the most complicated characters to rank in DBD, and also one of the 3 I consider to have a very big problem in their kit. The thing about Trickster is that he is a killer of 2 extremes. Either you absolutely demolish a chase in seconds with nothing the survivors can do, or you feel powerless against survivors that know how to loop and use structures to their advantage. That extreme dynamic that the Trickster has makes him, in my opinion, to be a very frustrating to play as and against, because in some matches you might feel like a god, but in other matches you feel useless. He is very map dependent, some add-ons can help him, and he is also very good at camping, so at least that's a plus for the Trickster. But good luck playing Trickster on console or Switch, because I genuinely think playing Trickster on mobile is easier than on controller. Either way, overall, Trickster is a weakish character. Even if a survivor you feel gets downed very easily, Trickster has an easy counterplay that relies on map generation, and as long as survivors use that against this character, Trickster loses all of his lethality and he becomes a weaker Huntress that takes way too long to down a survivor, with no map traversal or slowdown, especially against survivors with Made for This, because he is a 110% killer, and yes, I mentioned that perk again. Finally, we have reached the average tier. All of these killers are balanced or can perform well, but they don't stand out. The Doctor is the first character that I would say is balanced, and the only reason he is ranked so low is because there are significantly better killers overall. The Doctor is a beginner's favorite character, which is weird considering that his add-ons might be the most complex, as well as having one of the most complex powers with plenty of different effects, but the truth is that he is easy to understand. Doctor has one of the best tracking tools out of any killer, the Static Blast, which allows him to know the location of survivors hit with his blast and allows him to skip the boring part of searching immersed survivors. And the Doctor also has an anti-loop power that allows him to stop survivors from vaulting or throwing pallets with a well-timed hit. The only issue is that this anti-loop slows you down, so you cannot just spam it, because that will end up hurting you more than benefiting you. In a way, the Doctor's passive madness effects are also really good against new survivors that are not that good at hitting skill checks, so a lot of new killers can win purely because of that. Of course, against really good survivors, Doctor's kit doesn't help much, as good survivors are not afraid of you, and they know how to hit skill checks and loop correctly to avoid the electric shots. The Wraith is a good balanced killer overall, although he has a bad reputation. The add-on variety of the Wraith allows him to have various builds to play with, and the power allows Wraith to traverse the map quickly, combined with his invisibility and no-turn radius. That is enough map traversal and map pressure to make survivors have to worry about your whereabouts while they are repairing generators. Wraith also has an anti-loop power thanks to the boost he gets after uncloaking, which can make some loops unsafe. His speed also allows him to catch up to survivors quickly and even cut them from running or blocking walls and pallets, giving him an edge above other killers. Truth is, Wraith is a very balanced character, but there are just better options both in the stealth and map traversal department. But he is still one of the best picks for beginners since he is also a free character you get by finishing the tutorial. And talking about good stealth killers, Ghostface can be overall better than Wraith in various aspects, most notably lethality. In fact, Ghostface can instantly down someone at the start of the match thanks to his stealth, allowing him to have a very good early game. Then, by marking all survivors to 99, Ghostface can instantly down and skip entire chase sequences if played right. For that reason, even if Ghostface is simple to play, I think he has high enough skill ceiling that puts him above a lot of characters in the game, but his power can be easily countered by survivors just looking at you, especially since the reveal mechanics can suffer from server issues. So if you get a good team, you can essentially turn into an M1 character with no anti-loop and no map traversal. I still think the lethality Ghostface offers is enough to rank him higher than most of the other characters in the game. Hillbilly, who was once considered one of the best characters in the game, is now worse than Bubba, who was considered the worst Hillbilly of DBD. The thing that makes me rank him so low is not strength, because in all honesty, Hillbilly can be very lethal on the hands of a good player, and his map mobility and insta-saw potential is really strong. The issue with this character is that every single patch, every single new DLC, Hillbilly becomes harder to play. Maps are less good for this character and more cluttered with objects and weird collisions. In fact, I had to go and edit this part of the script because they announced on the last PTB that they fixed collisions on Eyrie of Crows, making him harder to play on that map. I also hold the opinion that Hillbilly is by far the hardest killer to play in terms of skill ceiling, as you require a lot of mechanical skill in order to perform well. So considering all of this, why would you main a character that gets constantly disrespected by the devs, keeps getting worse and worse maps to play as, and has the potential of getting shadow nerfed with a simple bug fix on a random patch? There's just no point. And before we go to what I consider the most balanced tier, let's talk about two problematic characters. This is a surprising position for many, and honestly one of the hardest positions to make, along with Trickster, and one more killer we will talk about soon. The Skull Merchant is by far the most controversial character in the game and the worst designed so far. The problem is that she is not weak by any means, so ranking her low would be unfair, since she can essentially win any game you want as long as you completely ditch your morals, because a killer that can hold the best team in the world for more than 50 minutes in a match is something not even the best character in the game can do. At the same time, she is not strong because of her power, she is strong because the devs designed a very poor character design that excels at 3-genning, so most survivors will simply DC against her, and those that stay will still not have the coordination of the best team in the world. There is literally nothing positive I can say about her, because even if you don't have a 3-gen with this character, if you want to compete, you need two very rare add-ons combined that are very obnoxious to play against, and you will still end up 3-genning without even realizing it. She gets speed, giving lose-lose situations to survivors. She can expose survivors with her drones. She can be extremely strong in certain indoor maps, but all of that is completely useless, and behavior confirmed that she is problematic and that they will change her again in the future just like Freddy Krueger. And the Knight is the last character who has a problematic design, and I honestly have no solutions for it. Having AI helpers is a really cool idea, but in-game it does not translate very well, and this results in the Knight being able to corner a lot of survivors in certain loops and maps that allow them no other option but to take the hit or get downed. So the only realistic counterplay survivors have is just hold W and keep running, leave every single loop. In that case, Knight is just an M1 killer that is able to harass generators from afar, and is also able to break pallets really quick with the Carnifex. Also, for some reason, the devs decided that survivors who can dodge the AI helpers for long enough can pick up the banner that the AI leaves on the ground to get themselves haste and endurance, by far the two strongest effects survivors can have. So if you get counterplayed as a Knight, survivors get rewarded by a lot. So again, we have another character that feels very strong in certain situations but very weak in others. But overall, Knight is the strongest character out of all problematic designs in my opinion, simply because he's the only one where you can play him without ditching your morals and you can still get results. He is also significantly better with Map of the Realm, so if you are not using that add-on, give it a try and thank me later. And now let's talk about characters that are, in my opinion, very balanced. Boba is one of the most rushed down characters in the killer's cast. His power completely destroys pallets and makes survivors have to play in a more careful way, because no other killer has such an easy insta-kill like Boba, who can also counter Sprint Burst with his Chainsaw Dash, one of the strongest survivor perks. The thing that makes Leatherface so strong is that he can punish survivor mistakes very well, with the punishment being an instant down and possibly various pallets gone from the map, making windows the only true counter against this character. But of course, we cannot talk about Boba without mentioning his camping abilities. Leatherface is by far the best camper there is, with nothing survivors can do if you want to confirm a sacrifice. Despite what you might think, not a lot of killers have this privilege, since a good coordinated team or even a solo queue that is good enough can body block. This thing makes Boba the best basement camper, so if you can catch a survivor early in the game in the basement, you are basically guaranteed to get sacrifices just because of how scary it is to save against Leatherface. Nemesis is another rushdown character, but in a completely different way. Instead of instantly downing survivors, Nemesis requires to hit survivors 3 times with a tentacle strike, a power that gives him a huge advantage in anti-loop, since you can hit through walls and pallets and also through certain low obstacles. Each time you infect a survivor, your power becomes stronger, with tier 2 allowing you to break pallets, making Nemesis by far the character that can destroy pallets the fastest on base kit. And on tier 3, your tentacle strike gets more range and you get a little bit more speed. But that's not all. Nemesis comes with 2 zombies that can be the most useful beings in the entire match or come in clutch, and also they serve as tracking, since they hold their hands up whenever they see a survivor and start chasing them. If you get lucky, zombies can bother survivors repairing generators, buying you some time. You also get time whenever survivors cure their infections with vaccines, since they will have to go out of their way to get one. Overall, Nemesis is very balanced. He is not that strong, but also not that weak. Demogorgon is, in my opinion, the pinnacle of balanced character design, as it has map traversal and also tracking thanks to the portals, and an anti-loop power that can allow it to break pallets very fast and even zone survivors thanks to the shred. Demogorgon even has stealth, but it's not worth enough to make a build centered around it. Also, if you equip Save the Best for Last, you end up being one of the strongest killers there are in Chase, but that's more on the perk being so good rather than Demogorgon's kit. There isn't really much I can say about this character other than the shred mechanics being good enough that they allow you to hit some insane shreds and make some loops completely unsafe for survivors, a huge benefit in favor of the Demogorgon. I'm going to be completely honest, I completely underestimated Slinger back in the days. I think he has one of the best 1 vs 1 powers in DBD, allowing him to get hits in very strong loops despite him being a slower character than most. He is also the only range killer that can benefit from basic attack buffs like Save the Best for Last or the exposed status effect you get from Noed, so that can give him a significant edge over the rest of the cast. In fact, Jolt is one of the most popular gen regression perks, and Slinger is the only range character that can use it well, even without any map mobility, and even without any map pressure or slowdown. Deathslinger's lethality is so strong that it compensates for the downsides, and he has way better zoning than most characters, since his spear shot can reach 18 meters max. Also, this is off script, but I noticed that Deathslinger's shot feels very weird lately. I've been missing a lot, and sometimes hits that I would have gotten in the past are missed now. So I don't know, I wanted to ask if you also feel that way if you play Deathslinger on the latest patches. We are finally in the lower A tier. All of these characters are very good and solid, but have very strong counterplay against high caliber survivors. Starting with the low end of A tier killers, we have Singularity, and really, this killer's kit has everything you would need to do well. A good tracking power, very good anti-chase and anti-loop power, and insane mobility. The problem is that the survivor counterplay is so strong that a good team can render this killer useless, and most of the time while playing Singularity, it's normal to feel powerless. The key to playing well with the Singularity is to play him in the most aggressive way possible, using the cameras while in chase instead of just having them near generators, because those will end up EMP'd. The more aggressive you are with Singularity, the more success you will get, as he is one of the only killers capable of being in constant chases with everyone without having any downtime of searching for survivors or just catching up. Holding W doesn't work with this killer either, which is something that gives him an edge over the majority. Still, the fact that it's so easy to counter makes it hard for me to rank him any higher, especially because I genuinely think this killer can be rendered completely useless by a good competitive team. There is also another very big downside from this character, and that is map dependency. If you get an indoors map with Singularity, you are going to have to play perfectly in order to get any results. Singularity is one of the most complex killer to play as due to the fact that you need to know absolutely everything in the match, the positioning of the cameras, know the maps perfectly, and I raised the same question as I did with Hillbilly. Why should you play Singularity when you can play Skull Merchant, turn off your brain, and still get results? I never thought I would make a tier list where the Onryo is A tier, but they did it. Behavior finally buffed her. Problem is it seems that this was thanks to the monkey's paw, because now she is by far the strongest pop stomper ever, and that's not good, because it all depends on one thing: do survivors pick up tapes at the start or not? If the answer is no, the game will be over, since she will be able to condemn the reviews of the survivors. If the answer is yes, Sadako still has the possibility to completely tunnel a survivor out of the match and make their game miserable. The only way to counter her will be with a good team, in which case she is still the same pathetic stealth killer with no anti-loop. But the reality is, no matter how much you lie to yourself, you are not playing against Team Eternal every match. Sadako is laughably easy to get results with. You just have to spam teleports without even thinking, so there is no way to rank her lower than A tier, because you can play with her with one hand and still get results. She is so easy that I fully expect a nerf this year, because her kill rates must be insane, and she already had the best kill rates the last time they showed it. I don't know what behavior was planning with this rework, but this is not it. The Hag is a setup character just like the Trapper. However, unlike him, she is actually strong. Her traps can render entire loops useless because she can teleport to any of the traps that are activated, and since she has a low pick rate, most survivors actually don't know how to properly deal with her. In fact, some survivors might not know that you can wipe the traps off by coming close to them while crouching. The Hag has an insane snowball potential once she catches the first survivor on hook, as unlike the rest of the killer cast, for some reason, behavior forgot to implement an anti-camping mechanic, which means you can essentially place as many traps as you want near a hook survivor, and there isn't much they can do besides come crouching, save them, or trigger the trap so you can teleport back and get a hit. Her add-ons also give her an insane variety of playstyles, so you might not know what kind of hack player you are playing against as a survivor, and combine this with her aforementioned low pick rate, and this makes Hag a very strong character to play with in most matches. The only problem comes when the team you are playing against is experienced against her, and those survivors can hurt her a lot by harassing her traps while she cannot do much, which is the reason she is not any higher on the list. Overall, I think Dredge is a very balanced character, but its kit allows it to stand out compared to the rest. The Dredge is another one of those characters that have insane map mobility thanks to the locker teleport. It also has an anti-loop power thanks to the remnant that you can teleport back, and the Nightfall mechanic allows Dredge to become one of the strongest characters in DBD for a short period of time, where you have insane mobility, very good tracking, and the potential to snowball the entire match and down various survivors in very quick succession. The only problem I see with this character is that they have way too many counters, with the first one being locking lockers, which slows Dredge down and also gives a very loud audio cue that they have teleported. There is also another mechanic that allows a survivor to go to a remnant and break it, disallowing Dredge from teleporting back. And most importantly, despite this character having everything in its kit to be a stealth killer, Dredge is insanely loud, and you can easily tell the location of this killer through walls just by listening to the broken vacuum sound effect they play, especially in Nightfall, where they are supposed to be silent in order to take advantage of the undetectable. Dredge is also map dependent due to the positioning of lockers. Most notably, you will notice this on the swamp maps, where there aren't many places to teleport to, but luckily, swamp will be the next map reworked. Cenobite, just like Sadako, is another poop stomper, and possibly one of the most underrated characters just because of how truly strong they are. Against a solo queue team that is not coordinated enough to get the box, Cenobite can quickly demolish them, as he is the only character in the game that has slowdown, which requires Cenobite to do absolutely nothing in order to get it, the chain hunt. So even if you have no idea what you are doing, you are still progressing in the match, and that's a quality that not many characters have, so that already makes Cenobite a very good character to play as. But if you are a good Cenobite that understands the spawn logic of the Lament configuration, you can make the match an absolute mess no matter the skill level of the survivors. Their anti-loop power can be very strong in some matches, but also weak in others due to their placement of the chains. But the fact is, those chains are always part of your power. So unlike the other characters we talked about in this list, even if you get a good team that understands how Cenobite works, they are still very strong and can force survivors into losing a lot of time by having to go to the Lament configuration, because at worst, what you get is a survivor not doing generators and the potential to teleport across the map and start a chase immediately, with the only true downside from them being the fact that chains feel underwhelming most of the time. I might be making a big mistake here by ranking a character that is not even out yet, But I am confident enough in saying that Xenomorph is by no means a weak character, and it has the potential to become a very annoying character for survivors to play against. Even if I don't have enough experience yet as I only played the PTB, what I know for a fact is that Xenomorph has an insane map traversal power that is not limited to any cooldowns, the ability to track survivors by their footsteps in the tunnels, a very strong anti-loop power that has no wind-up and works like a Nemesis whip, only it can actually go over obstacles by dragging it vertically, which is already a discovery that increases the skill ceiling of Xeno by an absurd amount, and it's not even released live for consoles. If I ranked Demogorgon and Nemesis as balanced, there is no possible way that Xenomorph is lower than them, because I consider them way better than Nemesis or Demo combined. It's true that the power has counterplay with the flamethrowers, but honestly something I noticed is that they are not that bad honestly, and can be countered by playing smart as a killer, unlike Singularity's EMPs, and the punishment is not that serious because you get the power back passively, and you also have zero cooldowns, so you can just charge your power with the tunnels, and the tunnels work like Sadako's TVs, meaning most of the time they are next to generators, so you can immediately start chases and pressure gens from the start of the match. Maybe Xenomorph will be weaker than I thought, or maybe they are the next S tier killer once people learn to play them better, but I personally see a lot of potential for this character, and I hope behavior doesn't end up nerfing the alien after this video. And from now on, all killers are really good, especially when mastered. The twins might be a meme in the community due to the fact that nobody plays them, and you should be thankful for that, because trust me, the reason people don't play twins is not because they are weak. If you can get past the clunky experience, the game-breaking bugs, the frustrating mechanics, and if you don't care at all about survivors' fun, the twins offer some of the best snowball matches ever. The thing that makes her so powerful is that Victor, her brother, can completely steamroll the entire match in one single usage, and being injured against twins is a death sentence for survivors. It's true that survivors can counter Victor or hold Victor hostage, making Charlotte an M1 killer, but the truth is, you get Victor so fast that it's almost meaningless most of the time. Singularity gets punished significantly more just by existing in the match. The devs have confirmed that twins will get changes earlier next year, so this position might change in the future. I admit I might have overrated the Huntress, but I truly think that Huntress is the pinnacle of good game design. Her power is extremely simple to understand, but it has an insane skill ceiling. Being a good Huntress player is significantly more impressive to me than being the best clown, doctor, or Freddy player. The thing that makes her so powerful is that the survivor movement has to completely change just because of her ability to hit any survivor as long as there is line of sight. And sometimes, Huntress can even hit you in places you didn't expect. The cooldown for attacks is so fast that you can snowball a match by catching two survivors in really bad positions. She is also a very strong camper, and her add-ons give her a lot of potential to make interesting builds like aura reading, insta down, or fast cooldowns. Out of all ranged characters, Huntress is by far the best one, and while Made for This is a very prominent perk in the meta, I feel like Huntress can still hold her ground. Another thing not many players talk about is her zoning ability, since she can just hold hatches for a long time and survivors will have to predict or dodge, and most of the times it's useless. Her zoning power is, in my opinion, way better than the rest. There is a reason she has the biggest pick rate in DBD. With the Oni, you start the match as an M1 killer with no tracking, map mobility, and basically no power. Get one hit, and you are ready to completely snowball the entire match just with one usage of your power, because after that hit, you will be able to get your power consistently, and this is one of the best, if not the best powers in the entire game, because it allows you to instantly down survivors and move around the map at a very fast speed. It also gives way more mobility options than other characters like Hillbilly or Wesker because of the way the power works, allowing you to get 180 curve hits. When you compare Oni to Myers, it's clear who is the best out of the two, and this is the character I was referring to when I was talking about Myers. Oni has a counter, and that is playing very safe at the start, but not everyone is capable of doing this. The match completely changes after one single hit. Pyramid Head has always been one of the strongest characters in DBD, and for a reason. Unlike the vast majority of killers, Pyramid Head requires basically no add-ons in order to carry his power. Despite not having any mobility either, Pyramid Head has a very strong anti-loop power and a very strong status effect that allows him to not lose any time after downing a survivor, and most importantly, bypassing very strong meta perks like Off the Record, Borrowed Time, Decisive Strike, Deliverance, Reassurance, and basically any perk that works on hooks, making him the best tunneler killer there is. Another very powerful thing that Pyramid Head has that I never talked about in any previous tier list is his zoning power, similar to the Huntress, since he gets almost no penalty by cancelling his power. Now, it's true that it might feel clunky compared to a lot of other killers, but you can just practice with each match until you are a god at hitting crazy shots with your power. Albert Wesker is the killer that made the most impact with his inclusion in the game. Everyone seems to be playing him, and why? Well, not only is he from a fantastic license, not only is he fun, he is really strong, but not overpowered. Wesker has so many interesting techs and tricks you can learn with his power that completely elevate him above a lot of other simpler characters, with techs like the Uro bending to hug techs. His power is also very simple to understand for new players, and his Ouroboros infections is a nice bonus that cannot be ignored by survivors because it gives them a huge penalty. Wesker could easily be an S tier character, and the only reason he is not is because he is balanced. He has no mechanics that can be abused that only he has access to. His attack is telegraphed, and his Ouroboros infection has enough sprays to allow survivors to heal various times per match. I will never understand why there aren't many Plague players, but I am also grateful for it, because she might be one of the most oppressive characters for survivors. Her power is very unique and an experience that you won't get with anyone else. The thing that makes her so powerful is that she forces survivors to make a very big choice, either stay injured for the rest of the match, which results in her being an insta-down character with the power to get the strongest range attack in game, or they cleanse, which gives her more charges for her strongest attack. It's like playing with Noed for the rest of the match, only you get tracking because they infect generators and they constantly cough. There is also a very nice passive that comes with playing with her, and that is completely bypassing heal perks and medkits. And finally, we reached the top 4 best characters in DBD. No matter how many tier lists I make, the artist will always be the 4th best killer in the game simply because of her ability to multitask, which can only be revealed by night in some capacity. You can be chasing a survivor, injuring another while in chase, harassing survivors repairing generators from far away, and injure survivors that are attempting to rescue. Her power is so strong that most loops become useless against her, so the only counterplay is to just leave, similar to the Knight. But the difference is that artists can place her birds in ways that injure survivors trying to escape. So my point is, in theory, an artist main could be extremely oppressive, and the craziest part for me is that she is a 115% speed character, so even at worst, you still can play her like a normal but insanely good killer with a ranged attack. Even after countless nerfs, the Spirit's power design is still one of the best for the meta of DBD, simply because her power essentially allows her to punish survivors that try to hold W against her. Get a nice pair of headphones and you will be able to track survivors while phasing with no problem. She is one of the most lethal characters simply because in a lot of situations, there isn't much survivors can do against her in various loops. However, before her changes, she was really easy to play with, so now that she is not that busted, I think a third place of best killer is fair. The Blight rushes into the second best killer power title just like he rushes to start the first match thanks to Lethal Pursuer and his speed add-ons. Blight's power has always been one of the best simply because fundamentally you are killing two birds with one stone. You can traverse the map insanely fast and way better than Hillbilly, and you are also the weapon, so that means you can bring death to all survivors very fast, and this lethality only increases with the amount of busted add-ons he has. And the best part is that since so many players are Blight mains, there is probably a guide for every single loop there is and how to get injuries with whatever tech they end up creating. Just like the Spirit and the next character, Blight's power punishes survivors holding W, which is the strongest counter survivors have for a lot of powers, so it's obvious that no matter what, unless his power changes in some significant way, Blight will always be the second best character in DBD. And you know, the video is already pretty long and my opinion hasn't changed in any tier list, nor it will change anytime soon. Nurse breaks the game, ignores survivors counterplay, is easier to play than people say she is, you just know the drill. Anyways, let me know what you think about this tier list and if you disagree with my placements. I tried to give some controversial or spicy placements on this video in specific. So thank you for watching and have a nice day.